Is something our church has been intentionally working on over the last few years. We've been hearing from parents who are visiting about how often they felt unwelcome at churches. They felt bad if their kids were noisy or restless or received dirty looks from other churchgoers. They lamented the fact that they had no place to go with very young kids during worship where they could be comfortable but also not disturb others. They expressed how they wanted their children to be in worship, but also be engaged in the worship and not just on display. So we took several steps. First, we built a family room in the back of the sanctuary with large windows so the whole service could be seen. A speaker pipes in the audio for the service so it feels like you're with the rest of the congregation and not segregated in some room away from the sanctuary upstairs or in the basement. We put in some comfortable gliders and chairs from IKEA that took way too long to put together for parents to sit in and in moms to potentially nurse their infants in. We also put in comfortable chairs for children to sit in and small activities for children such as toys and books, those little play mats and gyms they could sit in with balls and little things to mess with. The room is used on most Sundays by families who need a bit of extra space or privacy, or whose young children just need a bit of time on the floor with toys, or by mothers who need to nurse but want to stay in worship. Many of our younger families also sit in our balcony because there's a lot of space to spread out there. We put a couple bookshelves filled with children's books, so if the children are getting a bit restless, a parent can easily grab a book for them. Our children and youth director also created worship binders for children. The binders have laminated activity sheets and dry erase markers with them, so after they are used, they can be cleaned and wiped off and used again. These are available at our Welcome Center and in the sanctuary. We also wanted to be clear that it is okay for infants and young children to be in worship. We found that sometimes parents feel guilty about bringing their kids to church out of fear that they will disturb others or people will get mad. In some of Derry's responses to my questions to the church, a few young parents have already expressed this fear and their choice to usually stay home and just watch the live stream. We put something simple in our bulletin on the main inside page so everyone would see that we welcome parents and lets families know what options and resources are available to them to make their worship experience with their families meaningful and welcoming as possible. So we put it in right here in our main bulletin. It says, "Parents with young children, you and your children are always welcome at UPC. We understand that children can sometimes be wiggly and noisy. It's okay. We're glad you and they are here. You may sit anywhere you like, but many of our young families enjoy the extra space of the balcony. A quiet room is available for parents and infants at the back of the sanctuary. An excellent nursery is also available across from the office suite with the pager system in use. Children's worship activity kits with quiet biblical activities are available from ushers at the Welcome Center." We also wanted to think about how children participate in worship. In years past, the children sat on the steps facing the congregation. That visual symbol suggested that children were there to be seen by the adults, and the children acted that way. They'd answer questions or behave in a way that was meant to draw attention and to draw a response from the congregation, whether that was laughter or one of those, "oh, how cute" moments. Our time with children was functioning more as a time for adults to see the children. It was not an authentic and meaningful time for the children to participate in the worship life of the church that Sunday. We made the intentional choice to name the time with children Time for Young Disciples, to connect this time in the service with our mission to grow and nurture followers of Christ in a welcoming community. We didn't want this time to be a cute time for the children to be on show or to be seen or as a way to really just share announcements for adults through talking with the kids. That marginalizes the children and robs them of their time for worship. We changed the structure of the Time for Young Disciples and had the children sit on the floor facing the chancel so they continued to be a part of the larger congregation. We moved it in this service from before Scripture to after Scripture so they could hear the Scripture read, and then we made their time always a teaching on that Scripture that tied into the larger theme of the worship for that day. That way, the time for young disciples is also a time for all disciples. At the end of each Time for Young Disciples, our children and youth director leads the entire congregation in a responsive prayer. She says one line, and everyone, including the children, responds with a simple one-line response that is repeated throughout the prayer. It is a way for the Time for Young Disciples to still be a meaningful time of worship for all ages, and it creates intergenerational prayer and worship together. We also spent time thinking about how children can lead in worship. We invite children to help with different parts of the liturgy, whether that is the call to worship, reading scripture, or offering a prayer. On months when we have a fifth Sunday, we have children lead and participate in most parts of the worship service, and we let them write their own prayers, their own liturgies, and pick some of the songs. On the fourth Sunday of the month, we do something called Food on the Fourth. We collect food for local food pantries every day, but on the fourth Sunday of the month, we encourage the congregation to bring bags of food, donations into worship. As kids come down for the Time for Young Disciples, they go through the congregation and collect all the food and place it in a basket in front of the communion table. This helps children participate in the larger mission of the church with the rest of the church, and helps children physically see and experience what the church is doing to meet a need in the community. Recently, we started a once-a-month worship service on Sunday afternoons that is specifically designed for younger families. We encourage the whole congregation to come, but whereas on most Sundays children adapt to the adults' worship, in this service, adults adapt to a worship geared towards children. Each service has music that is easy for children to sing and move to, a biblical story that children can come down front and see and interact with, collaborative prayer as an interactive opportunity for people to pray together, whether it's writing something, doing something. And we have an interactive art project that serves to further interpret the biblical story. Sometimes it has a mission component, like art made for our shut-ins, or it's a collaborative art piece to put up in the church, or an individual work to take home. We finish the service with a shared healthy meal together. Children are an important part of the church. It is a passion of mine to include children in the larger worship, education, mission, and fellowship of the church that are authentic and meaningful both to them and members of all other ages. I look forward to learning about how Derry ministers to children and includes children in the life of the church, and how we can build upon that foundation together.